Welcome, everyone. We're really glad to have you here. It's great to be hosting another Blue Circle Health cooking class. My name is Scott from Blue Circle Health, and just honored to be with you today. Just very quickly, for those who are not already familiar with Blue Circle Health, we support adults with type 1 diabetes through a free virtual clinical care, education, and support program. And a big part of that is creating spaces like this where we can learn, connect, and try something new together. Today, Rita is going to walk us through preparing a white bean salad with olives and tomato vinaigrette. I will drop the recipe in the chat in just a few minutes, and I'll also send it out afterward along with the recording. Now, before we jump in, I do have to take care of a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So first, feel free to use the chat throughout the session. I'll be keeping an eye on it as we go along and pass any questions along to Rita when I can find moments to bump in and interrupt in without too much disruption. The session is being recorded. Participation in the session today is completely voluntary, and anything that you share may be visible to others, for example, messages in the chat. And then, as always, we're not providing medical advice or endorsing any specific brands or products. And we always recommend connecting with your healthcare team for anything specific to your situation. All right, thanks for your patience with that. Rita, can you give us a brief introduction and then feel free to take it away?
All right. Thanks, Scott. It's so good to be here again. And thank you all for joining us. My name's Rita Carey Rubin. I'm a diabetes educator and dietitian here at Blue Circle. And I have worked with folks living with type 1 for about, I lose count now. It's been a while. Um, 28 years, I think. Anyway, I love doing cooking classes. So thank you for joining us and allowing us to provide this service for you all. I hope that it's enjoyable tonight. So yeah, we're going to talk about beans tonight. And I often get lots of questions about how to add beans to meals and the value of beans, how to add fiber to your diet. And beans can be one of the best ways to add fiber. So we're going to just jump in and start talking about that. And our recipe is super easy. It's just a bean salad and very, very variable. You can add things, you can take things away. This recipe is really easy to adjust to your own tastes and go out and try new things. So we're gonna start with beans, obviously. And so I've got a variety of different beans here. And we're gonna use white beans today for this recipe. Just because the flavors just really work really well with all the ingredients. So I'm wondering, as I talk about beans and cooking beans, anybody who would like to share their experience with maybe some favorite bean recipes, or if you make beans at home, from dried beans, let me know how you do that. Like, what are your go-to tips? Because I find that if you cook them from scratch, they can be a very economical food source, high in protein and fiber, but maybe a little intimidating sometimes if you haven't done it before. So white beans for this recipe, you can use any kind. I have a variety of different types here. They vary in size and texture a little bit, but they're real similar. So these are just navy beans, little pea beans, really small. And remember that when they cook up, they about triple in size usually. So they're not this tiny when you cook them up. So these are navy beans. I have some, um, oh gosh, great northern beans. So a little bit bigger. These are baby limers, a little bit different shape. And then beans that I used for our recipe today that I cooked, and I have some soaking back here. These are cannellini, so these are basically a white-skinned kidney bean in that family. The cannellinis are great to use for this recipe because they're big and they've got some bite to them. So, but any of the beans would do. So, the first step that I usually take when I make beans from scratch is I soak them. And the time that you need to soak them really depends on the bean. And both the size of the bean, but also like maybe where you bought them, how old the beans might be. I know you can't tell how old a bean is. But if you buy them from maybe a store that you think has good turnover, like people go in and shop and buy dried beans regularly, they might be a little fresher than a store maybe that doesn't have such great turnover. Or if you like to buy dried beans online, there are several specialty sites that sell different kinds of dried beans, heirloom beans. One of my favorite sites to buy beans from is called Rancho Gordo, and they sell a variety of beautiful heirloom beans, and they have all sorts of tips online on how to cook them and recipes. And these happen to be Rancho Gordo beans. So these guys have been soaking for a while. They didn't really need to be because they're fresh. You know, when I bought them, I mean, they turn over a lot of beans at that company, so they're not very old. But they've been soaking for, oh, I don't know now, maybe about 20 hours or so. So they're really quite tender already. I can almost, like if I bite them, they're kind of chewy. Like I wouldn't eat them like this because it's not really good for your gut and your digestion. But so I know that these beans I don't have to cook for very long. And there's a lot of different ways to cook them. So the one way that I typically cook them is if they're fresh like this and they've been soaked a while, is I just put them on the stovetop. So that's what I'm going to do right now. And show you my system is I do keep the soaking liquid. There are people that recommended to toss the soaking liquid to maybe help the beans be more digestible. I've done it both ways, and I don't notice a difference, but if you do, for sure, you know, if you feel like tossing the soaking liquid is beneficial, go ahead and do it. But there are some nutrients and phytochemicals that are in that soaking liquid, and also some flavor, so that if you can leave the soaking liquid with the beans. And I'm going to add some water. So I'm adding enough water to cover the beans by a couple of inches, because I want to make sure that they don't dry out, right? And maybe a little bit more. This happens to be hot water from a tea kettle. You can have cold water as well, but hot water kind of speeds up the cooking process a little bit. And I like to add flavor to my pot of beans. So I'm going to throw in some bay leaves and a couple of crushed cloves of garlic. I don't need to chop these. I'm just going to squish them and remove the peel. And might just cut these in half because they didn't squish too well. And you can leave the garlic in there, so when you eat the beans, you can actually enjoy a nice, soft, sweet clove of garlic in there. So I'll just cut these guys in half just to allow more flavor. And I usually throw in just a little bit of salt, not a lot. You know, there's different theories too about adding salt to beans, and that they can slow down or toughen the beans, they'll slow down the cooking or toughen the beans. And that's definitely true, I think, if the beans are not too fresh. You may want to add salt later, and definitely acids will slow down the cooking process. And I'll just grind in some fresh ground pepper. And that's it. So these may cook by the time our class is done. I'm not sure, but I'm going to put them back here on the stove and see what happens. So when you cook beans on the stovetop, bring them to a boil. So you want to let them know that cooking is happening. It helps to get the cooking started, and also certain kinds of beans, especially in the kidney bean family, have some phytochemicals that might be a little irritating to the gut. So if you boil them first for about 10 minutes, that helps to take care of that. So I always boil them for about 10 minutes and then I just turn them down to a low simmer. And like I said, since these are so soft, I think that they may cook in about 20 minutes or so. So we'll see. All right, we'll talk about other ways of cooking beans in a minute, but I want to start making a recipe. So yeah, any ideas you have about beans or questions, throw them out there in the chat. So oh yeah,
We've
so
got
here's the bean. Yeah,
a comment that
very good.
also sharing that she cooks beans and soaks them for, a long time, like you did, 12 to 20 hours. But one thing that many of us didn't know in the chat was um, that older beans need a longer time to soak. So we're going to add that into our wonderful tidbit tip jar from Rita's cooking classes.
If I've added a helpful tip, I've done my job.
You always. In fact, it's rare that we only get one, so I'm waiting for the next couple to come out. So yeah, just keep on going, Rita.
And it always makes me happy. It really does.
Good.
And I'll just tell you this, if the beans, these are the beans anyway after they've been cooked, but I'm going to set them aside for a sec. If the beans are too old, they may never cook. They may never soften. You may be cooking those guys for 3 days and they just don't get soft. You didn't do anything wrong. It is just that the bean is just too old. So that has happened to me sometimes. So we're gonna start with just a vinaigrette. So this is, like I said, it's just a salad, and we're gonna make a simple vinaigrette, and this has a tomato base, and it's just Roma tomatoes, and they are diced, just diced small. You don't have to make yourself crazy with this, but how I do it is I slice off the ends, and then I gave myself a nice flat surface, and I just slice them into kind of thin slabs here. Romas are nice to use because they're not too juicy. A greenhouse tomato or a beefsteak or an heirloom, it might work well, but you're gonna have more juice, which actually isn't maybe necessarily a bad thing. But your vinaigrette might get watered down a little bit by all the juice. So, but it also might just taste good because there's all that tomato in there. So you can try different tomatoes here. Cherry tomatoes work, except for it's a whole lot of chopping. You have to chop each individual cherry tomato. So unless you really like chopping, I wouldn't recommend it. And one thing about Romans, they're almost always available. They're usually a little less expensive than other tomatoes. So I'm going to throw this in my bowl. I already have one tomato in here. And there's some additions you can make to this recipe. I am also going to throw in some sun-dried tomatoes, as I found them in the store, and I thought, oh, that would be great addition to the vinaigrette.
The different tomatoes varieties, and I imagine they have different properties, different tastes, different flavors, a bit like that. Tell us a little bit about what makes you want to add these tomatoes in there as well.
Oh, the sun-dried. Oh, that's a great question. Well, they give it a little umami. That's that kind of like that rich, meaty kind of flavor, which just adds depth, I guess, to the flavor of the dish. And then also it's a different texture.
Yeah, great.
Chili.
That makes sense.
Uh,
Couple of additional questions or comments that I want to share. One question is asking, can you use white canned cannellini beans in this recipe?
Absolutely. You can use canned beans. You don't have to do that from scratch at all. Canned beans are super easy. Yep, we just want to rinse them after they come out of the can and let them drain. And that's it. Super easy.
Great. Another question or comment is around beans, many beans being rich in potassium. Uh, does that mean that those may be dealing with kidney disease? Would be have to be a little bit mindful of how much they eat?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. So if you are on a potassium restriction, for sure, you wouldn't want to eat a large portion of beans. And you'd want to balance the potassium that you might get from, a high potassium food like this, filling in the rest of your day with lower potassium foods. Yeah, that's a great
Great
question.
call
Also,
out.
tomato
Yeah.
and potassium as well.
Uh,
So this would be definitely a high potassium meal for sure.
yeah. Can you also talk a little bit about beans are often, I mean, they've got a lot of carbs in them, but they also come with a lot of fiber that's helpful in dealing with those carbs, right?
It is, and that's really the question when you dose for beans, right? So the beans are high in fiber and they're also high in protein. So that's going to affect when the carbohydrates, the starches break down and turn to glucose and when they show up in your bloodstream. So if you guys are out there and you have some strategies about dosing for beans, let us know what works for you. But in general, what I've seen is if you've got a high fiber meal from anything, but beans fall into that category, you may not do a big pre-bolus because you may need to wait until you're just about to eat before you give yourself your insulin because those carbohydrates might not show up for a little while. What the fiber does is it will slow down the processing of the starch, and it also makes it more challenging for the digestive enzymes that we make to get at the starch. So it doesn't break down into glucose molecules right away. Usually starches start breaking down mostly when they leave your stomach and they enter the top part of your small intestine. But if that food has a lot of fiber, that food might make it down to the lower part of your small intestine before those starches start to break down. I mean, there's some breakdown along the way, but before you get more of that carbohydrate. So that may be an hour or more after you eat. So just being aware and maybe playing with the timing of your bolus. Either maybe like an extended bolus option if you're using an insulin pump with that option, or you may do a split bolus, part of your insulin up front, part of your insulin later on. But yeah, lots of different strategies there.
Do you have any thoughts on someone who might be wrestling, who enjoys beans, but is also wrestling with gastroparesis, which also slows down and causes inconsistent digestion timing, how they might approach some of their dosing with that? The comment says, boy, I love beans, but since dealing with gastroparesis, I've been afraid. And we don't want people afraid of their food if there's ways around it, right?
No, and there may or may not be a way around it, depending on what level of gastroparesis you have or where it's at day to day, because there's that variability, right?
Yeah.
But I would say probably eat them earlier in the day when you're being more active and the gut is more likely to be able to move things out of your stomach. I wouldn't eat them at night. And I would say do a small portion for sure, um, with some lower fiber foods alongside it. Yeah, that
Yeah.
might be a way to experiment. And then probably, yeah, you may be dosing for those beans after you eat them or later on, depending on what your pattern is.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rita. And thanks
Yeah.
for all these great questions and comments, everybody. Keep them
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, those are great. Chew your food really well too. That can help with gastroparesis. Just so that you're giving your gut a little bit of help. So it doesn't have to your stomach doesn't have to grind up the food so much if it's already chewed really well. It's gonna help things move through a little bit better. So I just threw in some olive oil and I'm gonna put in some lemon juice. So the recipe calls for either a combo of red wine vinegar, balsamic vinegar, really any kind of vinegar you want, or lemon juice, which is always my preferred acid in salads. I just think it's just a milder acid for my taste, and I like the taste of citrus more than like straight on vinegar. So this is a couple tablespoons of lemon juice and 4 tablespoons of olive oil, so kind of half and half. But play with it because you may like less vinegar or lemon juice or more, depending on how tart you like things. I'll throw in just a little bit of salt and some more ground pepper. I can hear my beans are boiling back there. Give them a little
We've
bit more
we've
time.
got another very interesting question. In the past, you've talked about the resistant starch for things like rices and pastas and things like that. Do beans also
Right.
do that?
Yeah, beans have resistant starch for sure. Um, partially because of all those fibers that are in there. The soluble fiber in beans really slows down how fast that food moves through your system. And one of the benefits of soluble fibers in beans is that it allows the food to get to that lower part of your small intestine and, pretty much intact. The fibers are intact and a lot of the starches are intact. And that serves as food for your microbiome. So that's the healthy bacteria that live in your gut that like to chew on those fibers. We call them MACs, microbiota accessible carbohydrates. And when they get down in that lower gut, those bacteria are so happy that you're feeding them some really good food. And uh, they produce things called short-chain fatty acids, which then feeds the cells that line your gut and keeps the lining of the gut healthy. It also triggers those satiety hormones. So the hormones that tell your body that you're full, like GLP-1, and there's another one called peptide YY. There's a bunch of chemicals that get hormones that get triggered when there's fibers down in that lower gut. So yeah, that's the kind of the idea of the resistant starch, right? Is if we cook up starch and we chill it, and then we eat it like the next day, either cold or reheated, that starch tends to digest a little bit more slowly. So beans do that naturally. Did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Feel like feel like I got off on a tangent there.
Not at all. It's what you did is you added some more tidbits to our Rita's tip jar of how and why things work the way they do. I think that's fantastic.
Okay, great. Um, so this is a shallot, and it belongs in the onion family, and it just looks like a tiny little onion, and it's more mild though than most onions. But you can use just regular onion for this. A red onion would work if you wanted, or anything really. So I'm just adding a little layer of flavor here and a little more texture. And my beans are boiling, so I'm going to turn them down and take care of. All right. So I want to chop this pretty well. So this is a nice technique when you want to chop things small. You sort of pivot your knife. Just put your hand down at the end of it and just rock it back and so it helps to mince or finely dice your ingredients. That goes into my vinaigrette. Ooh, that's a powerful shallot. Ooh, get in my eyes. Round. Okay. You've seen me cry here before, haven't you?
Um, I also love how you often use that particular knife as like a scooper. You scoop the things you've cut right onto it, and it's almost like a little, maybe not a scooper, but more of a spatula of sorts, right?
It is. I've gotten lectured by some real chefs on how that's kind of hard on your knife edge.
Oh,
And you shouldn't do that, but I just sharpen my knife and it's okay.
Yeah, that works. That works okay. Don't worry. There's no real chefs here on this side of the, at least in my house anyways. Um,
It's
another
funny out there. I apologize.
Is there any, do you have any methods around this recipe, um, for making it tastier when reheating? So I think what the question is getting at there is, are there maybe components of the salad that maybe reheat better than others, and others that you might want fresh that you keep aside and mix at the time of eating after reheating?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily, but you could serve this salad warm. That would actually be kind of tasty. I like that
Mm.
idea. Um, so I would say if you're gonna serve it warm or you're gonna reheat it, I would stop after you put your vinaigrette in the beans.
Okay.
And yes, so this is, and you can stick this in the fridge and let it marinate for a couple hours. And, I would really start to add a lot of flavor the longer it sits, just like, when you marinate anything. So this could go in the fridge. And then when you're
What
ready to serve,
about
yeah.
What about cooking? So the comment is has clarified. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Around not being able to have raw veggies with gastroparesis, and so that I imagine there's some different approaches to that. Maybe cooking the veggies beforehand before mixing them in, something
Oh,
like that. What are your thoughts there?
that's a great question. So you could use canned tomatoes,
Mhm.
which are peeled and already cooked. That's a great question. So just diced canned tomatoes, you could throw those in there. And then um, you might use like some onion and garlic powder
Okay.
instead of like the shallot and the garlic,
Sure.
which would add some nice flavor, but it wouldn't be additional particles and no additional fibers or anything like that.
Yeah. Is there
Might
any
be
concerns on, um, so she says that's very helpful, and but asking if does any of that reduce maybe the nutrition qualities or
no,
great,
not all. Oh,
great. Well, that's very
no.
nice.
Yeah,
Another question about, can you mix several different types of beans in this recipe?
you sure could. Yep.
Awesome.
So if you're cooking them yourself and they're different sizes, you'll get a variety of textures. So the smaller beans, if they go in the same pot as the bigger beans, you're gonna have some different textures where the smaller beans are gonna cook a little faster than the bigger beans, which can be fine if that's what you're looking for. If you want something that's got where all the beans are sort of intact, you might want to cook them separately, or just get different kinds of canned beans and mix them together. Sure, absolutely. So I'm gonna add some green onions. So along the gastroparesis theme, so the green onion might not work, but you could add something like I'm trying to think. Like you could saute maybe some bell peppers, and maybe you could saute some green onions. Maybe that would be good. And so you wouldn't do the raw veg. So those two things could be a nice approach. Yeah. If you were gonna make this ahead of time and not serve it right away, I would wait till you serve it to add the green onions, because 'cause they'll get a little soggy and weird if they're sitting in there too long. Yeah.
And are the green onions something where an onion powder could work instead, or what are you thinking? And yeah, okay, that's
Sure,
right.
the green onion they just add a slightly different onion flavor,
Uh-huh.
different profile, a little bit, and some color. Um, but you could do without it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm gonna also add some olives, and this is optional. If you don't like olives, don't add them. These are green. You could add black if you want to too. It just adds another layer of flavor, different visual interest and texture. But you can skip the olives
And
and keep it
I
simple.
get the feeling with this recipe, especially with many of your recipes, but with this one especially too, it's kind of modular, right? Like if you don't like a certain thing, you don't have to put it in, or if you want more of something, you can throw that in. And yeah, that's kind of neat. I like that.
Yeah, I mean the basic idea is you have beans and a vinaigrette. So, and then you get to add whatever you want to it. So you just make a basic vinegar. That's basically it. Is cook some beans. You make a vinaigrette out of the oils and the vinegar or the lemon juice that you like. Make a tasty vinaigrette, and they can let it sit and marinate in the fridge, or not. You could serve it right away, and then add embellishments. So if you don't like tomatoes, you could try, like I said, some different color bell peppers would really work here. And or you can just keep it really, really simple. Just beans and vinaigrette is delicious. And you throw in some fresh herbs like some parsley. So you can throw parsley in here now, or you would do it before you serve it. And I have some basil that I haven't managed to kill yet. So gonna pick off some basil here, and this you would definitely add at the very last minute because it will go brown and or black even, and it's not very pretty. So that's a good smell, right? Mm. So I might not, so I'm probably not gonna eat this right away. Um, I think I might put that as a little garnish. Um, so yeah, you could just serve it like this. If you want extra protein, the recipe also suggests that you have hard-boiled eggs you can slice in quarters and serve
Mhm.
alongside it. Mm. What else?
It looks beautiful. Yeah, delicious.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty, isn't it? And these are great. Bean salads are awesome if you're going out to a potluck, you know, or a picnic or something like that. They're super easy to make real fast, especially if you use canned ingredients.
Yeah.
You
We've got
could even use like, yeah.
a question, sorry to interrupt, a question about if someone doesn't care for olive oil, would avocado oil work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
The more neutral oil, sure. All right, I'm gonna check my beans that's here, see if they're done or not. And here we are. Been
Yeah.
simmering away here. Let's just try one. So I was going to talk about other ways to cook beans, and these feel like so you can either taste it or you can see if you can smush it with a spoon.
Okay.
Always best to taste it, I think. Um, they're almost done, but they're not quite. They're still crunchy. Um, so yeah, so that's one way. It's just on the stovetop. The other way is, and on the stovetop, you just want to make sure it's got enough liquid, right? I just want to keep an eye on it because I have definitely burned some pans not keeping an eye on my beans. Um, and then you could do a crock pot or a slow cooker, like an instant pot on slow cooking setting. And it might take 4 to 6 hours on high after you soak the beans, depending on the bean. We could do the same thing, add flavors, layers of flavors to the cooking liquid that just adds flavor to the beans. And then a way that I often cook beans too is in a pressure cooker. And especially if I need beans now.
Yeah, it
Oh,
accelerates the prep time, doesn't it?
it does. So you can pre-soak the beans and cook it in the pressure cooker. You can also do a quick soak, which is you can do this anyway with any kind of bean soaking procedure. You can like bring them to a boil and let them sit for at least an hour in the water, and that's a quick soak. And then you can even cook beans right from the dried bean, excuse me, in a pressure cooker. It just takes a little bit longer. The pressure cooker, you just gotta play with the timing.
Yeah.
So it could take like, if I put these in a pressure cooker, it would probably have taken maybe 5 minutes, maybe.
Wow.
And then I would let it come to a natural, pressure release. If you do a fast release, sometimes it pulls the skins off the beans, and so if you want it for a salad, it doesn't look so pretty.
Yeah. But I think that option that gives people a lot of options. So let's tackle one more question in the chat before we wrap up. So, and folks, let me know if I'm interpreting your question in the chat correctly or not. But there's a question about the carb value and whether it's kind of high for someone living with diabetes, or if they can maybe prepare a smaller dish of this on the side so they're not getting as many carbs. Um, how would you kind of balance that in a meal plan?
Yeah, definitely. So if what you're shooting for is a lower carb meal, you wanna incorporate some beans, I would say do a smaller portion. So I think in this recipe, it's 47 grams of carbs in a cup, but 11 grams of fiber. So what I've seen work is if you take about half the grams of fiber off the carb count, the total carb count, if it's a high fiber food. So what is that? 41 grams of carbs, accessible carbs technically, in a cup. So say that's too much. Maybe you're shooting for 30. I'd say to cut down the portion size. You could also add more vegetables to the recipe
Right.
and make the bean portion smaller. So the whole recipe calls for like 3 cups, I think, of cooked beans. So you could maybe say, oh, I'm only going to do 1.5 cups of beans, and I'm going to throw in a bunch more veggies.
Yeah.
Then that would significantly cut the carbohydrate down.
Yeah, great ideas. All right. Well, Rita, thank you so much. Again, I think we came away with at least three, maybe four gold nuggets in the Rita tip jar. And of course, it's just always so nice to spend time with you and learn some of these amazing recipes. Our next cooking class is on July 13th, and Rita is going to take us through a stir fry basics class. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun as well. I
Yeah,
will
there'll be some
be
surprises in there. There'll be surprises.
I love that. Yeah, that I can't wait. So for those asking, I'll send out a recording as well as the recipe to everyone who registered and signed up for the webinar. We'll also have it posted on our website. I'll get the email out to everybody. Um, I'm hoping by the end of the day, because I'm taking some time off and will be away for a bit. So I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to rush to get it out this afternoon before I end my day here. But we'll get that out to everybody. And then if you'd like to see what else is coming up in terms of webinars and things like that, you can head over to bluecirclehealth.org/events to explore upcoming sessions and register. We also have a really nice mix of group sessions. And again, the group sessions are for those who are either current or past Blue Circle Health participants, but the webinars and the cooking classes are open for really anybody who would like to come and join. And as always, we really appreciate your feedback. So depending on how you join today, you may see a quick survey that pops up. I'll also include it in the follow-up email, and let us know what other recipes or topics that you want to have us address. And then just thanks for being here, everybody, cooking along with us. We're really glad you joined. And yes, the video recording will be available as well. So Rita, I think that does it. Another great cooking class today.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad you all came. So much fun.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.